So, today we are going to talk about the Islamic version of Trinity. And many Christians and even atheists I've seen condemn Islam or accuse Islam of having a secret Trinity inside the theology. You might have seen the objection before. The objection or the argument from the other side is basically Allah is eternal, the Qur'an is eternal, and Allah's Ruh is eternal, or Allah's Ruh is eternal. And so basically there are three eternal entities existing, and since there are three distinct entities living or existing at the same time, that means there are three gods. So the first response to this is that it is a category error. How would the Qur'an be labeled as God? The Qur'an is merely the words of Allah. Can eternal words be God? They cannot be. To be God in the theistic perspective, you will need to have a consciousness, a sentience. You need to have power, omnipotence, and you need to be the first cause which everything is dependent upon. The Qur'an does not fit these criteria. So merely being eternal does not make you God. Now that we've got this out of the way, time for the Ruh or the Ruh. Now they say the Ruh. What do you mean by the Ruh? There are, in the English dictionaries which I could find, there are two definitions. In this case, from what I've seen in the English dictionaries, the first definition is the soul is a spiritual part of a person which continues to live after the body dies. In this case, this definition cannot be applied because first of all, Allah does not die. Second of all, He is not a body by the meaning the dictionary is using. The dictionary means that by body, that it is a physical, composed body, which Allah obviously isn't. Now the second definition is that Ruh is just the thoughts of a person, or the Ruh is the spiritual part of a person excluded from his power and everything else. With this definition, the same problem arises as from the Quranic one. The problem that it cannot be God because by definition it is an attribute of Allah and is not, God itself. God has these attributes. These attributes are from God and these attributes are not God. This can be understood with a really simple example. Is your speech you? No, it's not you. But is it distinct from you, meaning it's not under your possession? That's also false. It is under your possession and it is a part of you. In the same way, the speech of Allah, that is the Qur'an, and the Ruh of Allah are attributes. And if someone who affirms the Trinity asks you, well, why do you not affirm the same thing or say the same thing, apply the same logic to, the three persons in the Trinity so that they constitute as one God basically? The answer to that would be, these gods aren't, these persons aren't attributes of God. They are fully God themselves. They aren't attributes or parts. They are God fully. And so it would be a false analogy to apply the same thing to that, unless you want to fall into the heresy of partialism, which is to say that these three beings or these three persons aren't fully God and, are make up one God. You can also ask him, well, does your God have knowledge? Is his knowledge eternal, or, does it change? Of course, he would say his God's knowledge is eternal. So since Jesus has knowledge and Father has knowledge and the Holy Spirit has knowledge, that constitutes as three knowledge. Even if you take all of their knowledge as into one, that would mean that there are four gods by their definition, that anything which is eternal is supposedly God. You can apply this to any attribute, the attribute of mercy, the attribute of sentience, or whatever you want to call it. One thing which people mistake is that we call the physical Mus'haf or the physical book of Qur'an as eternal. No, we do not call it. What we call eternal is the speech of Allah, and our recitation has vocals and is created And by that I do not mean that the Qur'an we recite is created, but that our voice is created, and not that the Qur'an itself is created. Yeah, there are multiple views on this, but everyone agrees that the physical Mus'haf at least is created, because it's made of creative things like paper, ink, or when you recite it, it's just your voice, and your voice is definitely created. So peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum.